Good morning, everybody. Enter the stars. And this video is inspired by a comment that I got from a subscriber talking about transhumanism. Now, by this time, those of you that have been with me for some time recognize this scripture in Daniel 2:42 through 44, in which he talks about the final last days of the end of the world. And he talks about that the toes of this man, which represents the last and final days. Many of those of you who know about Bible prophecy in the book of Daniel, this will immediately become familiar to you. That there were feet of iron and watery clay. Now this scripture is a bit of an enigma, and there are many different variations of what people think that might mean in the last days. But the King James Version is very clear about this, talking about they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. Now, who are this race of people that is different than men, that are mingling themselves with the seed of men? And what about this subsequent verse here that talks about they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay? So those are the questions, and hopefully we've provided enough evidence on this channel to give you a really clear indication about who this seed is. We know about the seed and the enmity between Satan's seed, the serpent seed, and Eve's seed, the pure genetic bloodline of God and also of Jesus Christ. Most likely, these are the seed of the fallen angels, mixing themselves with men in the last days. So, we have to ask ourselves, is this prophecy being fulfilled? And I believe that prophecies like this are fulfilled in different layers, different levels. I think maybe the end result will be full transhumanism, the ability to download consciousness into robots and things of that nature. A lot of channels are covering that type of scenario. But I believe, you guys, that it is already being fulfilled in a lot of ways. And I'll tell you why. Satan has done a very effective job at interrupting and alienating us from our Creator. Now, the original Garden of Eden, of course, was supposed to be the way that we were supposed to live, in a symbiotic relationship with our Creator, a trusting relationship of love, of give and take, of trust. And Satan has interrupted that cycle, that ability to connect with our Creator, through the control of the natural resources of this planet. And I'll get even more specific with you, and once I begin to talk about this, it will make perfect sense to you. When we think about who our loyalties are, who are we beholden to, it is the corporations for which we work. They're the ones that allow us to pay our bills, keep the electricity on, pay the mortgages, achieve status that allows us to, have certain influence, to have a certain kind of, maybe a certain kind of woman in your life, maybe a certain kind of people around you, certain kinds of friends, certain kinds of clubs that you can be part of. A lot of people aspire to these kinds of things. And in our world, it is all ruled by the greenback, which is money. Of course, we've talked a lot about the color green on this channel. And so that makes those of us who buy into that system slaves to that system. And ultimately, the Bible tells us that Satan is the ruler of this world. So if he's the ruler of this world, then he's the ruler of these corporations. So Satan has interrupted the perfect cycle that God has for us to rely on nature. And he has interrupted that with his concrete jungles, the cities, the corporations, the quote-unquote steel. And he has mixed it with the watery clay, which is creation. But the two will not cleave, and we see that happening. People are stressed out, anxiety, depression, all of these things as a result of trying to be and do something that they are not used to. Competition, politics, all of these things are meant to keep you addicted and dependent on the monetary system. And Satan will show you glimpses of nature. He'll allow you to go for a weekend or here and there, but then he pulls you right back in with technology, the steel, cell phones, communications, right? He'll never allow you to go out onto the land and create for yourself something and depend on God, to depend on nature. He will never allow that to happen. I'll give you some more examples. This country is largely uninhabited. The very center of this country has only a fraction of the population. If the government was all about trying to help you get closer to God, why wouldn't he have a several 100-mile swath of land going north to south from coast to the interior, of land that people are just allowed to roam on, just as Adam and Eve did, and do whatever it is that they want to do, as long as they're not hurting or killing anybody? Obviously, they have the ability to track us down wherever we go, so any crime would not go unnoticed. And of course, I believe that if man were allowed to do this and live off of the resources, catch their own fish, hunt their own food, grow their own crops near a water source, of which there are plenty in the Midwest, have the ability to roam free like the Native Americans did, then I think that the best of people would come out. When people are not trying to control each other, we would see and hear about acts of love and kindness. We would see and hear about people achieving a greater closeness to their Creator. But because Satan has interrupted this and controls it through money, you have to have a fishing license. You can only catch so many fish. You can only, I got news for you. There are more than enough resources on this planet to sustain every man, woman, and child, and 3 to 4 times more than that. But Satan will never let you understand and believe that, because he has to create the shortage so that you depend on him, and period. And I'll give you another example. The salmon. 50% of salmon can be taken for food, and the resource can actually bring itself back from that every single year. More than enough food. Hundreds and hundreds, thousands and thousands of salmon to sustain entire tribes, sustain entire cities. And the reason why I know that this is true is because it happened back in the days of the Native Americans, and they survived. So I just wanted to share some of these thoughts with you guys. In our current system, it is impossible to go live off the land because there's too many rules. You're not allowed to do it. They do have national forests, but you have to pay. You also you're only allowed to stay in one spot for a certain amount of time. It's all controlled, okay? And so therefore, and it's only going to get worse from this point forward, because anytime they see someone able to live off of the land, they have to put a stop to that. There are people who own acres and acres of land who do live off the land, and the federal government has made excuses to go in and raid these places. They also have you bound to the law that you must pay taxes on that land till the day you die. And the people that are not generating any income, for them that is impossible, which is another very unfair rule. People should have the option of being in this monetary system or not, as long as they are following basic laws of the 10 Commandments of not murdering, not raping, pillaging, these kinds of things. You should be able to be the person you want to be without being in their system. Now, to many of you, this is probably a scary concept, to actually depend on God, depend on nature, and trust Him, because you've been programmed to depend on money and to go on about your life in the monetary system, but I can tell you, it's not as hard as you might think, okay? And many people on farms have been living this way for centuries in this country. You have to remember that the entire foundation of the world was based off of this kind of living. It isn't until recently that we've been locked into this monetary system. So I thought I would share these thoughts with you guys. Take care and be safe. Have a wonderful day.